All right, I'm Craig Power with Power Realty Advisors. We are talking buying versus renting in Boston and on the South Shore. Is it worth pouring all your savings into your first home, or is it better to keep renting for a little while, or maybe renting forever? I won't sugarcoat it. Market is tough out there for buyers right now, right? This isn't news. It's a lack of leverage. I don't think it's a bad time to buy, bigger picture, but there's certainly a lack of leverage, lack of options out there. It can just be really frustrating for buyers. Only about 1/3 of millennials are homeowners at this point. So I know for people of my generation, we are constantly weighing the prospect of buying versus renting. Right off the top, your first consideration is affordability. Just because you can get a mortgage for 3% or 3.5% down doesn't mean you should. The question is, first, are you truly in position to buy? And then also, how long do you plan to live in one place? Does this next purchase, does that fit into your long-term plan? But presumably, you're an adult watching this, so I'll stop trying to be your dad about it. Let's get into the differences. Now, assuming the buy fits into your longer term plan, you're paying current fair market value, I'm gonna say that buying generally is better. It's better for your bottom line. Allow me to remind you that mortgages theoretically at least end sometime in the future. But the way we're gonna compare buying versus renting today is mostly based on costs, which we'll get into momentarily. First, I'd like to establish that there are some hard to quantify differences between buying versus renting, especially with renting. The major pluses would be sort of unquantifiable, right? So we're gonna look at here, I have the highlighted major differences between buying versus renting, okay? And so these are partially dependent on your own values and lifestyle and future plans. Starting with buying, the key benefit is your investment potential. If you struggle to understand why people say real estate is a good investment, real estate trends upward over the long term. The short-term future is always less predictable, but real estate over the long term, the value trends up, and it outpaces inflation. So homes typically appreciate in value. Even if you don't keep up with the home, your land value probably still goes up. And unlike renting, you have a chance to build equity. When you're renting, you're paying the landlord's mortgage off. When you're owning, part of your mortgage payment each month goes toward your principal. And that is, people like to call it the forced savings benefit of buying a home. Renting has some major benefits as well, though. So this is what I'm calling unquantifiable. I keep using that word. I know we like to say renting's just throwing money away. It's not. It's not just throwing money away. Renting has the benefit of flexibility. You may be renting a place where you couldn't afford to buy, like a nice apartment in the Back Bay or the South End, so you get to experience that location as a renter. Renting might keep your savings in your pocket to capitalize on another type of investment opportunity or start a business or even travel, so that's what's hard to quantify about buying is your down payment is no longer liquid, right? It's great to build equity, but in theory, there's an opportunity cost there too, right? If that money had been placed in a mutual fund, your entire down payment for the next 5 years, you could be getting, 12%, 13% annual returns, but now that money's tied up in the house the next 5 years. So this is big picture stuff that you have to consider, and I can't tell you about your situation. Only you can do that. Again, this isn't realtor spin. As long as the buy fits into your long-term plan, you're paying current fair market value, a few other disclaimers built in there, right? Buying is better. I can't help but look at the net worth, wealth building aspect of owning over renting. And we joke about today's prices all the time. Look at these ridiculous prices. Look at this ridiculous price for this condo, this single family home. We were saying the same stuff 2 to 3 years ago, and prices are up on those same properties, probably 10 to 15%. That's what they're selling for. That's how it goes. I'm recording this in February of 2021. With COVID in Boston over the last year, we have seen to a degree the much talked about exodus of people moving from the city into the suburbs. So property values have gone up overall, but especially in the suburbs, and what it is, COVID accelerated people doing this buy versus rent math for themselves. The perks of living and paying to live in Coolidge Corner and the North End and Southie, those perks are no longer the same. So yeah, COVID sort of accelerated this whole process. I mean, as you can imagine, living in Fenway is not nearly as cool when the Eastern Standard is closed. And now it's permanently closed. So it's tragic. RIP in peace, Eastern Standard. The pros and cons of buying versus renting, especially in the near term or short term future, rely on the costs. And I've seen this phrased in a way I really like: unrecoverable costs. That's the way we're gonna make this comparison here, unrecoverable costs. So an unrecoverable cost would be defined as money spent that cannot be refunded or resold. So here, we can take a closer look with the slide. So with renting, it's easy. Your unrecoverable costs are the amount you pay in rent. When you're buying a home, the unrecoverable costs are harder to identify. Your mortgage payment breaks down into principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Equity is obviously good, and that's the ultimate financial perk of buying your own home. But it's your mortgage interest that's a prime example of an unrecoverable cost. Right now, mortgage rates are at an all-time low, floating around 2.65%, which has incentivized more buyers. This is the cost of debt only, not equity. So if you're putting down 5% on your down payment, the interest is on the remaining 95% you're borrowing. Property taxes, factor those in, another cost. Looking at listings in your area, you'll see the most recent tax assessment. Your annual tax bill probably falls between 1 and 1.5% of the value of the home. How about repairs and maintenance? When you're renting, you aren't responsible for typical wear and tear items. When you have water damage coming through the roof, that's a landlord responsibility. But when you own, that's a maintenance expense, and it's not like one of those building improvement projects where the value of the home gets a boost either. It's a simple repair you need to do that doesn't really impact your home's asset value. When you research renting versus buying, you may encounter the 5% rule. Now, I didn't invent this. I stole it years ago, and I've been pumping it ever since. But basically, it's a quick reference, and it's not a perfect tool because it's not like you're comparing identical properties. Chances are you aren't comparing your current 2-bedroom condo rental and weighing that up against the 2-bedroom condo next door that's the exact same, right? So it is an oversimplification. The 5% rule is a quick reference, and it assumes a homeowner can anticipate paying 5% of the value of the home in unrecoverable costs. That's the contention anyway. So the idea is when you add up your property taxes, mortgage interest, maintenance and repair costs, that will come out to about 5% of the home's value, okay? So, take the home you're considering buying. Maybe it's on the market now or it's a recent sale you like. Multiply it by 5% and divide by 12 months. So if you can rent for less than that monthly amount, renting may be a better financial decision for you. By the numbers anyway. We're looking at it from a cost standpoint. You might have a sweet deal on a rental, paying below market rent, and the 5% rule might tell you to hold on to that bargain while you can. So for a $500,000 home, you could assume around $25,000 a year in unrecoverable costs, which translates to $2,083 a month. So in that scenario, renting for $1,900 a month might be more sensible. The reason this is so relevant is we seem to be becoming more of a rental economy. I don't want to go off on a whole tirade about wealth inequality, whatever, but there is a sort of split happening, accelerated by COVID a little bit, I think. More people are getting priced out of the places they want to live, priced out of places they grew up in. So this rent versus buy calculation is always going on. Many of our clients this past year alone have done their own version of this where maybe their number one preferred location, number one preferred neighborhood, it just wasn't feasible for them. And so based on that fact alone, renting was better for them. Renting was the only way to be where they wanted to be. And so what many of my buyer clients did eventually was, they got frustrated with the market, but they opened their search up to locations they hadn't given strong consideration to before. They found better value and they got more for their money. And so that whole shorter term rent versus buy calculation, it changed for them. And the good news is, now they have that longer term investment potential owning a home. This is my grand theory of the local market here on the South Shore specifically. The millennial generation, having been priced out of some of the most desirable areas, is going to move into some of the lesser desirable areas, right? And we're gonna build them up, folks. That's how it's gonna happen. Well, whether it's certain towns or whatever you wanna call it. I've had a lot of deals follow this same trajectory just over the last year alone. And these are all people who I look at, I know they're gonna take great pride in their homes, in their communities, where I look at it and I say, I would like if they were my neighbor. Ultimately, it comes down to the comparison between those unrecoverable costs and the fundamental benefits of buying versus renting. For some people, flexibility is so valuable, if they're renting, and for others, it's not. They're really more focused on improving their net worth. If you are a tentative first-time buyer in the area, please don't hesitate to reach out if you're looking in Boston or the South Shore. My email is craig@powerrealtyboston.com. We recently uploaded a video comparing the FHA loan with a conventional loan that might be worth checking out as well. I hope that's helpful. Follow Power Realty Advisors on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.